Welcome to the Tech Talks Daily Podcast, where you can learn and be inspired by real-world examples of how technology is transforming businesses and reshaping industries in a language everyone can understand. Here is your host, Neil C. Hughes.
Welcome back to the Tech Talks Daily Podcast. Now, the travel corridor between the UK and US is open again, and I desperately want to get back stateside after attending conferences in San Francisco, Vegas, Phoenix, Chicago, Florida. It's Texas and Seattle that have been high on my bucket list, and after 2 years of being locked down, they're two places that I'd love to go to. And today's guests are waiting to speak with me today in Seattle. So I'm hoping to get a few tips from them. And they are Olga, Kundzich and Jonathan Schneider from a company called Moderne. And yes, it has become clear that modern cloud-native applications now require a tremendous amount of maintenance to keep up with that constant changes, all of the components that are used to build them. And that includes, of course, managing thousands of APIs and open source components. And that enormous challenge is taking up to 30% of the average development team's time, which obviously is acting as a tremendous drag on innovation and software quality. And this is where Moderne comes in, because they were founded to tackle this enormous problem. And Moderne's technology is based on OpenRewrite, a large-scale tool for code maintenance that Moderne's co-founder Jonathan Schneider developed when he was working at Netflix. Wow, sounds like there's a lot for us to get through there. So buckle up and hold on tight as I beam your ears all the way to Seattle, where Olga and Jonathan are waiting to speak with us now. So a massive warm welcome to the show. Can you tell the listeners a little about who you are and what you do?
Sure. Yeah, great to be here. So I'm Olga Kundzich, co-founder at Moderne. So I joined Jonathan in forming this company after we met and worked together at Pivotal on unrelated technology, Spinnaker continuous delivery, but saw a great need in the industry to bring forth what we are doing now, which is automated source code repair and traceability across the software delivery lifecycle. Prior to that, I worked at EMC in enterprise data protection, kind of working with everything that enterprises have in their environments, from Oracle databases to storage arrays to VMware.
Fantastic. Thank you, Olga. And we also have Jonathan on the call too today. Jonathan, can you tell listeners a little bit about you too?
Sure. Yeah. Hi, Neil. I'm Jonathan. My background here, I came from Netflix engineering tools, where I started the open source technology that we use today called OpenRewrite. And from there went to Pivotal, where, like Olga said, we met. And it took us a couple of years of touring enterprises to realize just how repeatable this problem of source code maintenance really was. We would talk to developers at various places, and they would say, wow, our dependency situation is really messed up, or we're really having a hard time keeping up. And the truth is, it's the same everywhere. They aren't alone. And we came to realize, I think, that the world's code base is really deeply connected on the level of the open source substrate upon which we all depend, and we're all solving the same problems. And so here we are today.
Fantastic. Well, a big warm welcome to you both. Now, to begin with, Olga, I'm going to ask you to share your origin story. Can you remember where your passion for tech came from, and ultimately what put you on this path you're on today?
Yeah, I think as a child, I really liked math and solving puzzles. That was kind of my favorite pastime. And so when I tried programming later on, it felt very similar. It gave me the same feeling, creative, rewarding. So that's how I got into technology. But then I also realized that technology is becoming our sort of critical infrastructure on which our society depends, and more so. So it's really important that we take good care of it.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And Jonathan, can you share your story too, and the path that led you to where you are now?
Yeah, it's kind of like Olga said, I actually went to college on a violin performance scholarship. And so I love the creative disciplines. And I think it'd be surprising to some to find that software engineering can be such a creative discipline or artistic discipline. There's an elegance to it. There's an elegance to that in math too. And at best, software development is really like play, painting a beautiful painting or playing a beautiful piece of music. And I think right now we're kind of stuck in a lot of tedium trying to keep up with things. And so we're really, part of our path is really around, wanting to be in a creative discipline, and we want to restore that creative discipline to its best.
Excellent. And one of the reasons I invited you both on the podcast today was to explore the downsides of cloud native application development and maintaining modern applications. It's a big battle. It's words that will resonate with everyone listening all over the world. But Olga, to begin with, can you share your insights on this area?
Yeah, I think we are building more and more applications right now, but assembling them very quickly out of third-party components, APIs, cloud vendors, etc. And right now, modern applications are 80% someone else's code. Stitching them very quickly together, it's like a glue code holding it together. And even though we can produce them much more quickly, the impact on software maintenance it's exponentially harder right now because it's no longer under your control. These third-party APIs and dependency change and evolve at their own pace. API changes, and developers have to really constantly restitch these things. So I think the other consequence of this is software maintenance became sort of very highly repeatable because everyone is restitching the same subset of third-party dependencies. And so this repeatability actually that pointed us towards automation.
And Jonathan, obviously there's businesses with hundreds, some even thousands of applications out there, and managing that application estate can be particularly challenging. But what insights do you have around this?
That's actually a really good point, Neil. It's about, you say there's hundreds or thousands of applications running. And what we find is, and what we found, I think, in tier one enterprises is that there's a lack of strategic visibility about what code is actually running where. We heard a story a while back about a organization that wanted to repair its carpet, and they pulled up the carpet and they found a wire going across the floor and followed the wire and actually found a server behind a wall that had been kind of accidentally walled in. And the question is kind of like, what's running on that thing, that had been there for who knows how long. So the second impact of increased composition of software is like there's more of it, and there's increasingly like a lack of traceability about what is running where. So when a new, say, 0-day security vulnerability arrives for a specific OSS library, do you know which applications are impacted? When we produced one big monolithic application and deployed it to production, we knew what source code was running where, and that's increasingly not the case. And that's part of our goal, is actually to provide that strategic visibility into what code is running where in production without impacting the software delivery lifecycle.
And I think one of the big changes over the last 2 years is that big shift towards data-driven decision-making now. And of course, to do that, we've got all those hundreds of applications. We need APIs to try and join all that information together and get the information out. And on top of that, managing thousands of APIs and open source components is an enormous challenge for any size company. And I believe it takes something like 30% of development teams' time too, which again acts as a tremendous drag on innovation and software quality. And I'm sure you've both got a few war stories around this one. So Olga, to begin with, do you have any client stories that you can share that will just resonate with listeners and help them think that they're not on their own in all this?
Yeah, one of our design partners had 40 repositories and 70 engineers in 2014. And now they still have the same amount of engineers, 70, but they have 900 repositories. So it's 25 times more code per engineer, totally like 20 million lines of code. So we feel like somewhere between 2014 and now something happened that we fundamentally changed how we are developing software. Sometimes
we say the software industrial revolution has arrived, somewhere between 2014 and 2021. It's like a componentization that did not exist prior to that point. And what we find is that when we try to apply the same techniques, it gets more and more, it breaks a bit more. So one of our customers, actually, we looked at a SAST tool that they had in-house that also estimated the manual time it would take to fix issues that it identified. And we said, well, let's just look at the top 10. And the top 10 issues was estimated to take 1,749 developer days worth of work to fix, or 4.9 years worth of work. And that's where, if we could provide recipe automation for those 10, and we did, it brings it down to like 3 or 4 days worth of work to fix. And that's really where we need to be in order to maintain that 25x, code that we now possess in 2021.
And you've both done a fantastic job of setting the scene now on the kind of challenges that are out there. And I suspect every single person listening to this podcast will have a similar story to share as well. And the reason I invited you on was the fact that Moderne was actually founded to tackle these enormous problems. And your technology is based in OpenRewrite, which is a large-scale tool for code maintenance that developed while working at Netflix. So, Jonathan, can you share that backstory?
Sure. Yeah. I was working on engineering tools there at Netflix. So at the time I was on build tools, and there was just 2 or 3 of us at any given time. And there was about 700 engineers total at Netflix. We were trying to get people to move forward on APIs. So for example, the platform team had a logging library that they had deprecated 6 years earlier, and there were still millions of references to this logging library around, because Netflix engineers would think, if I'm going to come into work one day, what's the most important thing I can do on any given day? And probably that isn't, swapping one logging library for another. So we try to build reporting tools to try to surface it to them, like, please change this. Please change this. Let me create bold text and emojis and colors and things, to try to really surface it and make it fun. And people just wouldn't change. They had more important things to do. So as I would go and interview teams, I kept hearing the same story, which is, if you do it for me, I'm happy to move along with you. But otherwise, I've got other things I need to do. And so at some point, I think, I kind of started to take that literally. What does it mean to do it for them? Well, that kind of implies automation, because of course there's 2 of us and 700 of them. So that's where this effort to build a large scale, what my manager at the time called distributed refactoring tool, came about. One that could make the change, but also be preserve the style of the original code, so that it was easy for a developer to accept that change.
And a key component to how Moderne automates cloud-native software remediation are recipes for common search and maintenance operations that can essentially be assembled into more complex recipes for framework migrations. But now, for the first time, a recipe has been developed by an independent software provider. So can you tell me more about this, Olga?
Sure. We recently collaborated with the Micronaut team at Oracle to provide such automated migrations for version 3 of their framework. So it relieves the burden on their consumers to perform the migration manually and removes the friction to adopting this new version. It's a competitive advantage for Micronaut relative to other frameworks that still require consumers to do these tedious migrations by hand. But it also allows Micronaut team to innovate faster and make more significant changes to their framework. So now version 4 of their framework can arrive earlier and have more significant changes in it. And overall, I feel like this really is a game changer for the industry and will allow us to unlock innovation.
Fantastic. And I'm going to ask you both now to stare into your virtual crystal balls and ask you, what excites you about the future of application development and DevOps? We've talked a lot about the problems and the solution that you've put into place, but as we're looking towards the future, what excites you and what role do you see Moderne playing in that future? And Olga, I'll ask you that first.
Yeah, I think we're still in the pretty early stages of software development as an industry, and important changes are coming. I think we have adopted automation for CI/CD, for infrastructure as code. So right now, the same we are bringing to the source code itself. And I think there's a lot of tedium in software development right now, and removing this friction, and will kind of unlock innovation for the industry as a whole.
Yeah, so true, that, Olga. There is a lot of friction and a lot of tedium in there. I know that I've experienced that firsthand. And Jonathan, is there anything that excites you about the future?
I do. I look at a framework like Spring Boot, which is widely used in the enterprise to build business critical applications. That could be a bank, that could be a retailer, that could be a government, that could be really cross industry. Spring Boot 1 was around from 2014 till its end of life in 2019. That's 5 years. It's a 5-year cycle. And it was a great product, but they learned in 5 years what they would have wanted to do. Were they able to do it again? And so Spring Boot 2 came out, and now, and I think what you see now is this desire by framework authors, the sort of core substrate upon which we all depend, to move faster, to learn faster, to iterate faster. And if we can do that, then banking moves faster in innovation, healthcare moves faster, retail moves faster, government moves faster. And anything we can do to help folks adopt change more quickly has a broad, spectrum impact on, society in general. That's what excites me about this.
I love how you've encountered the problem, created a solution, and now excited about the future and continue to evolve and adapt and be a part of that. But we're going to come full circle now, because we began our interview talking about your origin story, what put you on this path. And I'm going to have a little bit of fun with you both now and ask you, what was the soundtrack to your origin story? Is there a song or piece of music that has inspired you or just helps you get your head in the zone before a big meeting or going on stage? I'm going to ask you both for a song and a story, and we'll put that song on our Spotify playlist. And Olga, I'm going to put you under pressure first. What would your song be and why?
I'm going to delegate this to Jonathan.
Pressure's on you, Jonathan. Olga's passed.
Yeah, I'm ready to take it. I think it's I originally came from Missouri, so I'd say let's go to a Missouri artist that grew up not too far from where I grew up, and somebody that probably your listeners haven't heard too much. So I really enjoy the music of Nathaniel Rateliff, especially when he sings solo. And there's the song he has called "Fire and Levees." Levees is kind of what holds the river back, right? And this Missouri is full of rivers, so it always is good for me to hear something from home, I think.
Wow, what a great choice and a beautiful reason for it as well. Well, before I let you both go, for anyone listening that wants to find out more information, great work that you're doing, if you want to contact either of you or contact your team if they have any questions, what's the best starting point?
So we do have a simple form on Moderne, which is moderne.io. And we also welcome individual conversations. So Jonathan at moderne.io, Olga at moderne.io. Twitter DMs are always open. We love talking with individual developers and architects and management as well. So please reach out.
Well, thank you so much to both of you for taking the time to come on here, sharing your insights, the downsides of cloud-native application development and maintaining modern applications, and also the journey that we're on and how you're improving that and the role you're playing in the future. But more than anything, just sharing your very personal origin stories will put you on this path, and even a great song to finish too. So thank you to both of you for joining me today.
Thank you.
Thank you, Neil.
Wow, what a great story there. And I love how it all began. So many revealing insights from the backstory there while working at Netflix. But a huge thank you to Olga and Jonathan for coming on, sharing that story with us today. As always, let me know your thoughts. Email me, techblogwriter@outlook.com. You can connect with me on Twitter, LinkedIn, Instagram at Neil C. Hughes. And if you'd like to work with me, help launch your podcast or help with business blogs, my website is techblogwriter.co.uk. So keep those questions, insights, experiences, and pictures to come on the show. Keep them coming through. But that's it for today. So thank you for listening. And until next time, don't be a stranger.
Thank you for listening to the Tech Talks Daily Podcast with Neil C. Hughes. Remember, technology works best when it brings people together.